Pastor Sergey, we've known him about 20 years now, and we worked first with him when we were doing English lessons, and then we would do a Bible study afterwards in English. And it kind of grew, and then we, together with him and another couple, created our church. And it's called Light of Life Church. And a couple years later, we called him as pastor, and we've been mentoring him because he had been a Christian only about 5 or 6 years at that point, come out of some addiction. And he's just grown
He was young in ministry.
Young in ministry. Yeah, so we did a lot of training up and teaching him about leadership and stepping away from some of the old traditions that have gripped the churches there in Ukraine.
Like being open about finances in the church.
Yeah.
And back there, everyone wears a mask. So it was a little bit of work to get him to take his mask off.
Yeah, but he is just an awesome pastor. He is open. He is, when he preaches and teaches, it's much more life application now, not just kind of spitting out the Bible. Very personable, and just love him to death, you know. And we've kind of had our ups and downs as we've worked through some of the cultural issues and getting to know each other, but we adore him, and he's doing a great job. And the problem was that the car that he had, his son had brought from Poland. It was an older car while his son had worked there for a short period, and it was just breaking down all the time. And, you know, he doesn't have a lot of money, so a lot of the money was going into the car. And I came to Mark and said, you know, I think there's a need here.
And I thought, you know, okay, well, let's just ask and see where God takes this. So Laura presented the idea to Living Hope, and Living Hope checked their budget and came up with the exact amount of money he needed to purchase the car. But we didn't tell him that. So I began, you know, once we knew the money was coming in, I began talking to him about his junk. How's his piece of junk car today?
It's kind of a joke there.
he was kind of, you know, not really offended because he knows my character, and he harassed me about our junk that we had, and we had it replaced eventually, but now it's his turn, so I'm really giving it to him. And then the money comes in, and I started upping the pressure on him about his junk, and I kept on asking him, pushing. And I said, well, the money's come in, and we're going to transfer it to your account, but we gave him really strict ideas that the $6,000 doesn't mean you spend $3,000 on your car and then the other just disappears. You have to spend $6,000 on the car. That's what the church gave it to you for. That's it. But a private donor, gave $500 so that he could register the car. So it was like a perfect setup for all this. Yeah. And he was fighting off tears that day.
I remember Mark first said, you know, we've got this money for you, and told him the amount. And he was like, oh, you're joking.
He didn't believe it.
And we said, no, seriously, which is a word they use, seriozna. And he was like, what? Really? And he was speechless. And he got pretty emotional, and he was just like, why? And
a pastor speechless, that's kind of unusual.
So, of course, we gave him a hard time about that. And Sergey is really good about wanting to be above board and to be transparent with a lot of the things. So he understood those requirements. And it was kind of, we almost didn't really need to tell him, but we felt that we needed to tell him that.
He was worried about once the money comes to his account, then he's got to take it out. He's going to be charged fees there. And I expected all that, and we understand that, but he was really trying to find the perfect way of getting the money out without fees. Mm-hmm. But he also spent a lot of time finding the perfect car that cost the right amount of money.
And what's interesting is in how God worked in all this. One, providing the exact amount that he needed. Two, we were able to get it transferred to someone here in America who is traveling back, and they brought it back in cash. So he had the dollars, so he didn't lose any money in the exchange fees or ATM withdrawal fees or anything like that. And then at that exact moment is when he found a car that had just been brought into the country. Now, Pastor Sergey, of course, he preaches at our church, which is in the city, which is about 30, 40 minutes from his house. And then all the ministry that's involved in that, you know, the Bible studies and the visiting people and those kind of things. Our church has done some outreach to the refugees that are in our city and in our town. And so there's a lot of that movement going around. but he had also started working with the prison ministry. And it was just a small group of just a couple men. And he joined them and he started going into the prisons. And just before we started asking, and seeing the need about the car, one of the things that happened is that the prison that they go to that's locally to us, their inmate suicide rate dropped to 0. Assaults on staff dropped dramatically. And so in a prison meeting for the state of Vinica, they were given their statistics, and when the prison staff gave these statistics, the whole group of people went quiet and said, how is this happening? And so they shared about Pastor Sergei and Anatoly and Anatolievich and all their ministry that they had been doing with the prisoners who are long-term in the prison, lifers, the pretrial inmates, and then prisoners that come from the whole area to the hospital prison there.
And the more this ministry grows in the prison, the more we can see our pastor growing.
Yes.
Remember, he's a very young pastor, and he's kind of growing into this, and he's been around church a little bit, but, the church doesn't always teach good lessons. But he's overcoming all of that, and he's really starting to bloom with this ministry.
Yeah. And so when this situation happened, the prison system was so amazed that the director of all the prisons inside of the Vinica state went to this group and said, we want you in every one of our prisons.
This is huge.
It's a miracle.
Remember, everyone's got their mask on, and in the prison, if you are some church doing ministry there, if you're lucky enough, they don't want to take their mask off. They don't want to welcome you in. They are, very strict and staunch, and okay, you can talk to them, but it's like they know it's not going to be good, whatever you do.
And yeah, it's we have no problems here. Again, the old Soviet lifestyle is still embedded deeply in a lot of things, and even though they're moving away from it, there's still a lot there, especially in some of these lower government agencies. But one of the things that helped also with this is that we started an outreach to the staff. And that's kind of where I came in and going into the staff with my history working with the Bureau of Prisons here and expanding it. So we were focusing on the staff and on the prisoners. And it has just bloomed now. And they recently did an event in most of the prisons for Women's Day, which is March 8th. And they went into all of the prisons and they spoke to the female staff, but they also spoke to female prisoners. And I was able to participate in a number of those with the staff. And they were shocked and amazed. And it's taken me a lot to get into the prison. I mean, before the main invasion in February 2022, I had gotten into a prison north of us a while. I'm trying not to use cities so I don't give away some information. But and I had met with them several times, but then the war started, and that was too far away. They had a lot of military bases close to them, so it became a bit too dangerous. And so I turned more of my energy onto this local prison. And so in that combination of empowering the men that are doing this ministry and then reaching out to the staff, it's just blooming. And they're opening their doors to us and to Pastor Sergei and his group, and they're getting new volunteers, and it's just blooming, just like Mark said.
Okay, so I think it's important to bring up a little bit about the war in Ukraine, the Russian-Ukrainian war. We don't really get into the politics because we know there's a lot of misinformation and the politics are not important anyway. What's important is the people that are there. And what's important is God's hand upon our ministry and matching up with the people that he puts in front of us and helping those relationships to bloom. And that's what's happening with Sergei in this car and the prison ministry. But there's problems there also because there's not enough people for the harvest. So they're having now they have the whole state open. All the prisons are open to them, but they have 5 guys.
Yeah.
And that's not enough. And it's 5 guys whose hearts are really open to the kind of people that are there. There's some churches that want to go and take a picture and use the pictures to draw in funding.
Promote self.
But, if I had things my way, there would be no cameras allowed going in. Don't take pictures of any of it. maybe just one camera of someone we trust that will take the right kind of picture and delete all the wrong ones.
Yeah.
So there's issues there. But since the war is going on, people moved around, people are displaced, and I remember we were out feeding on the street, and there was a fight from one of the guys who seemed like he just wanted to be drunk all the time, and he'd come in and he'd be yelling, and I'm not afraid of people yelling. My background had plenty of that, and I know how to handle myself. So he was in a fight, and when he was down, I went over there and kind of pulled on his backpack just enough to make it so he couldn't stand up.
And he thought he just couldn't get up because he was drunk.
Yeah, he was drunk.
Yeah.
But he couldn't stand up, and boy, when he got up, his focus was on me, not on the guy he was fighting, which is what I intended. The other guy left.
Yeah.
But, this is some of the things that happened because of the war.
Yeah. And actually, his buddy in that situation was backing him up, and I got a hold of the buddy, and grabbed him by the front of his jacket and held on to him, and he didn't even see me. And I was yelling at him enough, and he looked at me, and he was just totally shocked. One, there's a woman. Two, that it's the American, and how do you deal? So they backed up, but then they started to get a little aggressive, and on the street, somebody who's really, really calm in a chaotic situation is considered more dangerous because you don't know what they're going to do. And so Mark and I, knowing that, both of us were really calm, looking at the guys like we're bored. Like, come on, what are you doing? And so it really threw them off.
This isn't my first time.
Yeah, we've had to break up a number of fights, but that's some of the issues, just some of the discord, but we've got a number of stories that we can share about how the war has impacted us and our territory, and some of the successes we
went to a group that of displaced people. They're a little older.
They're called internally displaced people because their homes have been destroyed or the territory is controlled by Russia and they can't go back. So they're not technically refugees, so internally displaced. So we went to this home.
Okay, so
housing.
Yeah, it was like an apartment building. We were in the room downstairs, a gathering room. Anyway, normally when people come in there, they bring in pastors, and the pastors have a message, and they preach and pray and sing a few songs. All those things are good, but that's not our style. Our style is to relate the stories to them and have the Bible kind of woven into all this. So we were given our testimony. It's the first time we met these people. And we give our testimony going back and forth, and we got it down pretty good. Give us 5 minutes or an hour, and we'll cut it to fit. So we were giving our testimony, and they were just amazed at how open we were with our lives.
Because they're not as open there.
And it's things like that really get people prepped for the Word of God to come at them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so that was a very interesting story, and we talked to a number of them, and a lot of them have family members who are drug addicts or alcoholics. Mm-hmm. So as he told his testimony about his time as being a drug addict and how we work with the men that we do now, it gave them hope, it opened up their hearts, and we were able to share, like he said, the Bible woven in there and how God saves and God can change.
Our lives preach wherever we go.
Whether we know it or not.
Yeah. And it's better that way.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share a story about Dima. Dima is at our rehabilitation center, House of David.
This guy came to us so many times.
5 times.
Drunk like you wouldn't believe. How is he still walking?
Yeah. Yeah, there was one time he was so drunk that we couldn't even get him over to the men's bunkhouse, and we just put some blankets on the floor and laid him there because he was just so incapacitated. And he came to us 3 times and stayed about 24 hours.
First 2 times, I think. 3 times he'd wake up in the morning and look around. It's like, where am I?
Where am I?
Here?
Yeah. So
see you later.
The 4th time he stayed with us, I think it was about a month. Maybe just over a month, and then he left. Now, you have to understand, he comes from a long line of alcoholics, and that's all he knows.
They're alcoholics, but they don't say they're alcoholics because they're able to still go to work, and they say they don't have problems, but they're wearing the mask.
Yeah. So the fifth time, which is this last time that he came to us, we were working with him. And again, the guys, we just really love on them because they've been beaten down by life. And Dima was like that. I mean, he was just closed, whatever you want. And so as we worked with him and just loved on him, he was in shock and he couldn't believe it, that even after being there 4 times, that we would still love on him. And as he started to bloom and be comfortable in the love, then we started speaking more about God. Now, he had heard about God
You're
before.
on the last time he came, right?
Yeah, this last
Okay.
time.
So last time he came, he tells us...
He's still with us.
He tells us the story that he just got out of prison. Well, for them, it's probably like a county jail where he was held till the court date comes, something like that. He tells us, "Oh, well, I was working and I took somebody stole his boss's. I got to think of the
Grinder.
Grinder.
Think of the English
Gotta
word.
think of the English word. Stole his grinder, and I'm thinking, well, you had the grinder? Yeah, I was at a restaurant, and it's like, so you took your boss's grinder to the restaurant, and somebody stole it from there, and then the police arrested you. I think that story's not true. He stole the boss's grinder, went and sold it, went to the restaurant, the
And
police
got
caught
drunk.
him, he got drunk. Okay, so that's the story, the real story behind it. And he's telling this story, it's like,
There's more to this.
So anyway, it took a while, his story changed, the truth came out,
Yeah.
things are better. Tell all that part.
Now he has to go to court. And in the wartime, they have a law that says that if you steal and do some of these things, the sentence is twice as long. He could go to prison for 5 years. So he's really nervous about that, and we're working with him, and he repents and, accepts Christ and is baptized, and, a lot of those things happen. And we're just talking to him about, you have to speak the truth. You have to do the truth.
He
you have to trust
repents
God.
through Christ, scripturally, Holy Spirit led, and he also begins to repent his story, and the truth starts coming out.
Yeah.
And
So anyway, by the time we go to court, it got delayed a couple of times, and we were able to submit some documentation about how he's changed.
whole time I'm telling him, this is God's plan.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Don't be fearful.
But he would pack his suitcase, and he'd say, if I'm taken into custody, can you keep my suitcase? And we're like, yes, we can, but we don't feel like that's going to happen. God is going to take care of you. You may have to go to prison, and we'll go visit you while you're there. We've done that with other guys that we've had, but God is going to care for you. And so what it turned out is we go into the court, and the judge is amazed at his change. She's amazed that Americans are still there because they expected everybody to run away, and we didn't, and that we're helping these men. And she ended up giving him 1 year of probation, no jail time whatsoever.
Yeah.
And he just finished his last visit to the probation officer before we left.
And this probation means he must stay at our place and check in every month.
Yeah.
So he's court mandated.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
this is great. He
Yeah.
can't run if he wanted to.
But he knew it was going to expire, and he still wants to stay with us.
Yeah.
Now, he's been with us, in August will be 2 years. And he's kind of afraid to go back out there and start renewing his life because he doesn't want to fall, because he's had that situation so many times. So right now what he does is he's working at an agricultural company in the village next to us, and they've just started working with strawberries, and they do tomatoes, and they do apples, and he'll work, until the fall at this company, and then he lives with us. And on the weekends he's with us, and he, we encourage him, we support him as he faces some of those temptations, but then he has this safe place to come back to. And we've helped him to start making decisions for his life, not doing it for him and saving him, but helping him as he makes these decisions. And it is amazing to see how he has bloomed as a man, as a Christian, and he acts as a big brother to the men at our center.
Yeah.
And just takes them under his wings. He confronts them sometimes, encourages them, and he wants to go into the prison ministry. And now that he's finished his probation, he can do the prison ministry.
When having a big brother there amongst the other guys is really important.
Very.
And we don't have a lot of those guys. We have guys that are successful and they went back to their wives or families, but with Dima, he's in our ministry, and he's in a position now where he can call the guys on their stories that are lies, that he knows they're
Stinking
lies.
thinking.
Yeah, and he can call them on it where we can't do that all the time. Otherwise, we'll chase him away. So it's perfect that he's there.
Yeah.
Perfect turnaround. Thank you, God.
And he has no family anywhere in Ukraine. You know, he has a brother that went to England. And so, like with a number of our guys, we become his family, you know. And when he does eventually move on and leave, I have a feeling with him, like a couple of the guys, he's not going to go too far. He's going to continue to come to the church that we're in and just, I mean, we work really hard to build that family environment. Even in the church, they have ministry and opportunity to start to work out their spiritual giftings. And so when they get done with us, that is their church. It's not the rehab center's church. So DEMA is just, it gives us hope in this difficult ministry.
I remember when I left rehab, got a job, started working, getting my life together, and I'm thinking I am never going back to rehab because I wanted to do that thing only once. So now I'm going to get my life back together. Little did I know God was bringing me back to rehab, and now I've been in it ever since.
Yeah. As a worker this time. Yeah.
Yes. Well, you've been to prison.
Yeah.
Okay. So as a worker, of course. She's been in prison for how many
17 plus years.
17 years.
Sometimes he'll tell that, and people are looking at me like, what? And it's
Yeah.
like, work there. But why don't we tell a couple stories about how the war has affected us and some of our interactions. The area where we live is a very small village of about 200 people. And if you go any distance north, east, south, or west, you're going to get into some high target areas. And so it's like God placed us right in the middle to protect us. But it does come close. We do have occasional rockets hitting not too far from us. Pastor Sergei, his territory and where his son lives just down the street, there's a couple times we're calling, you know, are you okay? And we continue to watch each other. And even when we're here, I've been, you know, communicating with them, are you okay? Because I saw that there's an air raid alert or extreme danger alert. But we've had a couple situations that have affected us, and one was when you were in store.
When the war just started, there were air raid sirens every day, and it's like, but there's not really that much stuff happening. Okay, well, off in a distance somewhere there may have been something, but the whole country would be on air raid, and then they'd start removing states, you know, that they knew were safe. And I do most of the shopping, so I'm ready to go into a store, and the air raid siren goes off. Okay, so I wait an hour, and it goes off again. Everything's clear. I go in and start shopping. Air raid siren goes off. So I go out of the store. I wait an hour. Everything clears up. I go in for the third time. And now I'm thinking, I'm just grabbing that cart and cashing out. I get right up there to the cashier, and it goes off the third time. I'm thinking, man, I should just go home. But I'm so close already. Another hour went by, all clear sounded. Finally, I went in and paid. It took all day to get a basket full of groceries.
Oh, you have to understand, this city is about an hour away from us. So it's not like he could come home and rest for a while and then go back. Yeah, but I think the kind of a funny story.
She thinks it's funny.
He was in Epicenter, which is kind of like a Home Depot.
Yeah.
And the air raid went off, and they made the announcement, but he didn't hear it. And next thing he knows,
of course, it's in Ukrainian language.
Yeah, he wasn't paying attention, you know, thinking in English.
And I'm seeing everybody walk toward the door. Well, I guess they were going both ways, but there's two different doors, so whatever. They were bugging out, and I wasn't. So I got caught up. They locked all the front doors because everyone was out, and then I got caught up with the employees that went to a bunker. And they make their employees get down underneath so that they're fully covered. And I'm standing by the entrance to the bunker, thinking the safest place for you is standing next to me because God's not done with me, so I'm safe.
And he's calling me, and he said, I'm in a bunker.
But they kind of pushed us all down a little more, so I went down one more step. And they were satisfied, and, you know, that was the end of that. But, you know, when it was over, I shopped and went home. But Laura loves to tell this story like I was scared or caught up with him. It wasn't that bad, you know. I'm thinking, what is this for, God? You know, I'm safe. I'm safe every day because I have the faith that God's not done. We have work to do.
I think one of the stressors, though, is like when one of us goes into the city without the other, you know, is having that contact, are you okay?
Getting caught up in something.
Yeah, and we did have some rockets hit the city. And actually, I was with Pastor Sergey, and we went to get humanitarian aid, and we were delayed. And if we had been coming back at that time, we would have been right where the rockets hit. So it was amazing to us how God just really protected us. Of course, at the time when we were delayed 2 hours, we were not very happy about it, you know, because it just was unrealistic. Why are we being delayed? But then we understood God's hand in that.
We had a couple very slow-moving drones fly over our house one night.
Yeah.
And, you know, again, my faith says, you know, I'm not afraid. God's protecting us. Laura, on the other hand, with all her history, she's afraid. And then she hears the guns firing and, you know, it's like now she's afraid that they're going to fall on our house because they were shot out of the sky.
Above us, yeah.
And I just go back to sleep.
Yeah, he does. Well, probably because of my time in combat, you know, some of those sounds kind of trigger me. Now, we didn't have drones, so I remember the first time the drones were flying over our village. I had woken up like 4 o'clock in the morning to take the dogs out because they got restless. And I walk out, and it's like this moped going like crazy.
Yeah. Full throttle, screaming.
And I'm thinking, who is going through the village, you know, at this time of night when there's a curfew? And then I see the spotlight and the air defense shooting at it. And I definitely know what those guns sound like and the tracers and everything. And it dawned on me, this is a drone. And that was when, kind of in the very beginning. And so we kind of got used to it. We would hear them shoot at night and, you know, pray for the 3 young men on the team that are near us.
And with my combat experience, which is none, just drug addiction, I'm already back to sleep.
Yeah. But that night, the air raid went off, and we were laying in bed talking, and all of a sudden, it was like, that is a drone directly over our house, probably only like 2 or 3 stories above us. It was really close. They fly kind of low. And it was like, wow, that just kind of makes it surreal, you know. And then we kind of talked about it a little bit, because he says he went back to sleep, but we talked some.
Yeah,
and then
there was a few minutes there.
And then the second one went over. And again, we're just praying, you know, God, let the air defense aim be true, that they would knock them down. And then it's like, but let it get over our field, not over our house, because, you know, that's some of the damage that happens is when it comes down. Another situation that we had was just January. We were up in Kiev going to the embassy, and we spent the night there in a rented apartment.
That was a little more serious.
Yeah, woken up at 5:30 in the morning with air raid sirens, and there you can hear the sirens in the city. In our village, we can't hear them, and so I have an app on my phone and for our territory. But in the city, you can hear them, and they go off. And we had just kind of woken up, and we're like, wow, those are air raid sirens. And then we start to hear the defense knocking the missiles out of the air. And there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we hear a huge explosion. The windows shake, and you can tell that one hit.
Yeah.
And we found out later, thankfully, it was just a parking lot in some apartment buildings, and it didn't hit any of the apartments.
Kind of sounded like a big car crash, but that's because the bomb hit cars and blew them up. But we were in an apartment that had big glass windows
all around the bedroom,
and we were on the second floor, and we thought, maybe it'd be a good idea to get behind a wall somewhere.
Yeah.
And downstairs, there was a wall like a fence. But there's big windows there, too, so it wasn't much better.
Yeah, but at least we were below, and we had the brick walls for the territory that were kind of breaking the concussion. Yeah, but the big explosion when the windows rattled, and we were like, we're surrounded by glass. We need to get up and move somewhere else. Yeah, that was kind of...
faith saves us all.
Yeah. And knowing that we're in the hand...
Through faith.
In God's hand. And even if we are injured or even if death comes, we know that we are in His purpose and that He is caring for us and that we are where we're supposed to be. And I think both of us can say that we've lived in disobedience to God in our lives, and we don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think also this shows how that idiom that says, don't underestimate the power of just showing up. Because as we have been there, and we've run into different people, and we've worked with the prisons and the police and medical clinics and schools, one of the biggest comments they said is, you didn't run away from us. You didn't run away. Just
showing up is kind of magical sometimes. We went to visit Laura's father in the hospital yesterday. He's got a manageable situation. Anyway, we meet this guy named Alex who has a history very much like mine. And he started out by saying, my father-in-law told him about our ministry. And he was saying, oh, I have a ministry like yours. I'm feeding the homeless every Friday. I buy them a bunch of bread and some clothing. And he says, but I'm not like you. And I told him, you're exactly like us. He told us his story, and many of the same elements in his story as are in mine. And, you know, it's like, by faith, I'm just stepping into things. And he said, I preached a message this morning.
Because he's a pastor.
Yeah.
And Mark's ordained.
And it's a lot like the pastor's Gibbs message yesterday of his shirt. He said, well, his message was he called Lazarus out, and he's still wearing the clothes that were there for burial. It's like, that's perfect. And what did Jesus say? He said, take those clothes off. Loose. And so he had to take his burial clothes off and get back with living. And it's like, that was perfect. And I told him about Gibbs' message, you know, it's like, this is all perfect. In the end, I told him, listen, never underestimate what you think is just a small thing, because it could be the thing for somebody.
Yeah.
And you know, if you think it's so small, then ask God for more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Simple.
But it was really interesting to hear their stories, and both being drug addicts and alcoholics, you know, God saving them, God giving them new life with a new wife, and both being ordained and preaching, although you're more of a pastoring shepherd, whereas he's more of a preaching shepherd. But
when I'm in Ukraine, I don't speak the language well enough. You know, the culture's different. There's a lot of things that are very difficult for me. But coming to the States, it's like I can speak my language here, and I know these people here and the culture here. I'm ready to just jump out there and do my thing. And I'm praying for opportunities to impact people's lives for Christ.
You know, I think sometimes we go through periods where we think that we're not influencing anybody for Christ. And we think, who am I? You know, I'm just a nobody. But God uses nobodies, and he uses the situations in our history, sometimes the things that we've been through that maybe we're ashamed of, we don't want to tell people, but that is God's training ground for us as we go out. And God always puts the exact person in front of us that we need or that needs us, and that we should never discount that. Some people have told us, oh, I could never be a missionary, you know, because I have this and this. Well, both of us have severe back injuries. You know, he's a diabetic. I have severe allergies, you know, and God still called us, and we still went. And he can use us no matter how broken we are, whether it's physically, you know, mentally, emotionally. God wants to use us. And that transparency that Mark talked about is extremely important here. But in Ukraine, it just opens doors. It's just amazing how God works.
18 years of drug addiction and alcoholism. My body's worn out. Hurt my back in 3 different places, got blown out discs. And God said, go, we're going. Of course, he's going to have to put the pieces together. He's going to have to take all those loose ends and tie them together into something. So I have faith for that. And yeah, my back hurts and my body's worn out. I got problems with my knees and my hip, and, you know, my bones are cracking, and, well, my joints are crackling. But, you know, it's God's problem. It's not my problem. How he's going to get this kind of impact from a guy like me, that's his problem. I just have to be ready to go and speak. Step into the situation and speak on his behalf.
Yeah.
It's a perfect setup.
Yeah.